myself and Harry thought we'd come along today just to kind of share our experience of having to redesign. So we've been through a big redesign at Aston, and we thought we'd share our experience of what happened, what we did, and how things have changed as a result of kind of those changes that we implemented. So you can see us here already on the camera, but that's the two of us. Myself and Harry have worked together for 10 years in various different forms, starting off in doing maths drop-in together, then teaching on the maths degree together, and we've worked together for the last 10 years. So I thought I'd set off by kind of setting the scene, what the challenge we were facing a couple of years ago, and what we did to try and kind of fix that change. So at Aston, we have a very large kind of mechanical engineering, chemical engineering programs with a couple of hundred on each one. But we had relatively low continuation rates with the students enrolled on those programs, mainly due to the mathematical content of the program. We have a pass rate, or we did have a pass rate on our first year engineering math modules at around 70%. So the university asked us to look at rewriting the module in a larger change that was going on. So myself and Harry were asked to redesign the first year maths module, but we were also asked to combine all of the different first year maths modules. So there was a first year maths module for mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, electrical engineering, chemistry. There was a different maths module for all of them. And we were asked to combine all these different maths modules into a single maths module. So that gave us a cohort of about 600 students on our module. And we was also told that we were no longer allowed to have the traditional sit-down exam for first year modules. So that was just kind of framing the challenge that we had. So low continuation rate due to maths modules, combining 3 or 4 maths modules into a single common one for all programs, and no longer allowed sit-down exams in the traditional sense. So we took this challenge on, and the first thing we thought about was the diagnostic maths quiz that we've been using for a number of years. So we started the diagnostic maths quiz 7 years ago for just computer science. So computer science students, when they started, they had to take this maths diagnostic quiz. It then was rolled out to the whole college. So every student on an engineering or maths-based degree who joins us at Aston during Welcome Week gets set a maths diagnostic quiz. Maybe not the welcome they might expect, but it was part of the program. We decided to take the diagnostic quiz and actually integrate it as part of the actual module. So students had to pass the diagnostic quiz. They had to take the diagnostic quiz, and we set the pass mark at 80%. So it was a high pass mark as a way of signalling the importance of engaging early with their studies and ensuring they had a really strong foundational competence in the math that we would be covering. We also changed the lens of which the diagnostic quiz was on. We went from just kind of testing their A-level material, is their A-level material kind of solid, to more looking at just the foundational maths knowledge that they would need to be successful in the module. So we changed the diagnostic quiz to look at things like, can they solve an equation? Can they do partial fractions? Can they do indices, solve simultaneous equations? Some of the things we probably would assume that they would be quite strong on. We'll soon see that wasn't the case. So to give you an idea, 56% of the students completed the diagnostic quiz in Welcome Week. I say complete, not pass, with the remainder of the students completing it within the next couple of weeks, as we said, as it formed part of the module. So the new design module had this diagnostic quiz as part of it. Um, so what else did we do with the module? Well, as we had a cohort of over 600 students and we weren't allowed to have traditional written exams anymore, we had to have an alternate assessment strategy. So we implemented some threshold assessment or mastery-based assessment, in which students had 5 online quizzes. They were written in Möbius, one of which was a diagnostic quiz, and they were required to get a mark of 80% on each of the 5 quizzes to pass the module. So each quiz was compulsory pass, and the pass mark was 80%. Did cause a few issues with quality assurance, because we were essentially changing the pass mark from 40% to 80%, but we did get a waiver in place for this to be done. For the 5 quizzes, our students were allowed unlimited number of attempts from the date at which the quiz was released. They had 40 minutes per attempt, and the attempts were drawn from a randomized pool of questions where different parameters, different questions, different whatevers were in the question each time. And I said this was all done on Möbius. So to give you an idea, we had 5 quizzes. We had the diagnostic quiz, which I've already mentioned. We had one on vectors and complex numbers. That was testing things like algebra of vectors, algebra of complex numbers, dot product, cross product, roots of unity, solving quadratic equations with complex answers. Matrices, we did algebra of matrices, so addition, subtraction, multiplication. We did eigenvalues, eigenvectors, all within Möbius. Differentiation, integration, the standard stuff that you would expect a first-year engineer to do. And then we finished with a quiz on ordinary differential equations, where we looked at first order, second order ODE. So we had these 5 quizzes with this high pass mark. And the idea was that the students would engage repeatedly with the quizzes. So they would get that practice in a low stress kind of environment. We wanted to turn down the stress levels of a single exam, and allow them to concentrate on trying to learn the material. So to give you an idea of what we're working with, out of that 56% of the students, which I think worked out about 350 students who took it in Welcome Week, only 39 of them actually passed the diagnostic quiz. That's 39 of them got 80% or more on what is basically a basic algebra quiz. So to give you an idea, the students really struggled with simplifying expressions, simultaneous equations, partial fractions, inequalities. But we use this information to tailor what we covered in the first few weeks of teaching. And we also worked in collaboration with library services to get additional workshop sessions put in place for them, mainly on those topics that we just didn't have time to cover. So simplifying an expression, dealing with fractions, those are some of the things that they struggled with, but we obviously wouldn't have time to cover everything in our lectures. So we put on a series of tutorials with them. And that was started in Welcome Week as well. So the first few days of Welcome Week, we did all these diagnostic quizzes, got the analysis done, fed over to our colleagues in library services, who then started putting out a series of workshops in the last couple of days of Welcome Week, and the next few weeks on some of these topics as well. And myself and Harry covered them in the first few weeks of teaching as well. We couldn't have done all of this without kind of Möbius and that instant feedback, especially with over 600 students on the cohort. So to give you an idea of how well the support sessions went down, the learning services offered 3 support mechanisms. They did the workshops as already mentioned on those areas where the students struggled. They ran some weekly peer-assisted learning PAL sessions, and they ran the normal maths drop-in that I think most places have. Attendance was very varied across the different support mechanisms, but as you can see, the PAL sessions, the peer-assisted learning sessions, was by far the most popular and was by far the most used. So what were our findings? So just to give you an idea of actually what we found when we did through this redesign of the module, there was a fairly weak negative correlation between the first diagnostic attempt and the PAL attendance. It was statistically significant, but with a cohort of 600, it would be seen as significant. But it did kind of indicate to us that those students who were maybe coming in with some lower initial confidence were more likely to engage with the support that we were putting in place. What we'll see in a minute when I put up some summary statistics, there was actually really high levels of engagement across all the topics that we covered, those 5 quizzes that we covered, and a real significant amount of time was put into these quizzes, which was what we were hoping for when we designed the module. We were hoping that students were going to repeatedly engage with the material, repeatedly keep attempting them, and the numbers seem to show that actually came true. And it also showed that the harder topics, maybe the one on differential equations, the numbers do show that there was a persistence with it. Okay, there was a lot more attempts at those harder quizzes than the easier ones. So it kind of worked as we were hoping. Okay, so I know it's a little bit blurry, that this table, but to give you an idea, the 5 quizzes are there. We've got the average mark on the first attempt. So remember, they're allowed unlimited attempts, but we could keep track of their first, second, third, however many attempts that they took. So the average marks were out of 50. Okay, so each quiz was out of 50. We can see the total attempts for each quiz. So there were 8,428 attempts of the quizzes, and total time spent was 229,185 minutes of total time spent by the students taking these quizzes. I should say that these figures don't take into account those students who had extra time, which was about 50 odd students. So these numbers are based on roughly 560 odd students. Okay. Which works out that 229,000 minutes worked out to be about half a year. So students spent about half a year in total attempting these quizzes. So looking at them, it did really align with what we were hoping would happen going with this threshold assessment. There was lots of attempts made, lots of time spent on it, and those topics with kind of conceptually more difficult, we can see more attempts were made and more time was spent on them. Lots of interpretations which we could take. We tried to take some positive interpretations that these unlimited attempts were encouraging the students to be persistent in their approach, that they kept engaging with the material rather than disengaging after they've had some failure. All of these things we were hoping for based on this mastery-based module design. So to give you some outcomes, the pass rate for the module was 90.7%. So up from 70% before. Student feedback was really positive, not just obviously the brilliant teaching that they had off myself and Harry, but the students were commenting about how they enjoyed the unlimited attempts, as it took away that sense of jeopardy associated with that traditional assessment. They felt confident that they could fail, that they could try, and it allowed them to focus on their learning. And those are their words, not ours. And in light of this, we have looked at changing the assessment model to this mastery-based assessment for second year, where again we'll be using Möbius to write a series of quizzes in a similar manner to what we've got here. So our big take home from the student feedback was that they really liked to take away the pressure of a final year exam, and they liked the idea that they could actually prioritize learning over just simply performing at a particular 2-hour period in the year. Now, There's obviously a big elephant in the room, and it's quite a smart elephant now, isn't it? And we were talking about generative AI, and these were some of the concerns that we had, that students would just use the generative AI to just obtain the answers to the quizzes without actually understanding anything. We worried that they might try and spot some patterns in the answers, and then just kind of do pattern recognition. Or we worried they'd just science staff to go even old school and just use something like Wolfram Alpha, um, or some of the online tools that they might have as well. So these were some of the risks that we did think about, and we tried our best to mitigate them by having an extensive number of questions with randomization, having multi-step problems. So they had to kind of do multiple steps and input multiple answers, um, rather than just a single final answer. Um, we set the pass mark to be 80% to encourage them to keep engaging. Unlimited attempts to take away the stress of just keep attempting them. And we really spent a lot of time explaining to the students that the assessment was a way of their learning process. Um, Obviously, we've only done it once, and we've got a lot to investigate further. But we were surprised looking at the number of attempts and time spent on the quizzes that we don't believe, but as I said, we need to look into it further, that the use of generative AI was a significant tool used by the students. But we do plan to investigate that a little bit further. So what we'd like to do moving forward is to augment the maths diagnostic quiz with a maths anxiety quiz. We have a very diverse group of students with various different levels of prior maths experience when they come and see us, and we've had students come and tell us, "Oh, I've not done maths, I've done BTECs. I haven't done maths A level for years." Um, we think having some kind of maths anxiety quiz as well will be able to help us to not only support the students with their maths, but also help them overcome the fear of maths. And that's what we've been told, is that these unlimited attempts did help reduce the fear in the maths. Um, we do obviously need to check that it is a genuine improvement in their maths ability and not just as we said, a byproduct of a change in assessment. But we did have some early indications that the math probably was a little bit better than previous. We have an engineering science one module that runs alongside the math module that also had a very low pass rate at 69% in previous years. This year it is up to the 90%. Again, nothing conclusive, but maybe a slight indicator that their maths ability is maybe slightly better than it was in previous years. Again, we need to do some work to find out. But the three takeaway points is that early diagnostic allowed us to tailor support for students. It allowed us to target the key topics that the cohort was weak on, which we wouldn't have been able to do without online assessment tools like Möbius. This idea is threshold assessment or mastery-based assessment. We think did change the student behavior and the student attitude to their studies, because we can see from the numbers that there was repeated engagement, and the student feedback did say that it did reduce their assessment anxiety. And the peer-assisted learning support that we put in place did seem to be really beneficial to the students. So that's everything that we did. We just thought we'd share kind of how things have gone with this module and what we did. So open up to any thoughts or questions.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Gareth. And before we open up to questions, if we can just show our appreciation for Gareth as well for that. So thank you very much. Lovely talk. Okay, if you can pop your questions into the Q&A, that would be great. There's one there from Tim Walker, Gareth, which talks about the workshop sessions that you ran at the beginning and whether those were voluntary or whether students were assigned to actually directed to go to those workshops, I'm guessing based on their diagnostic quiz, or even whether they'd completed the diagnostic quiz.
I can't see the questions, but yeah, to answer that question, um, everything was open to everyone. Um, when we initially started the diagnostic quiz and these kind of sessions, we did only target those students who potentially were seen as a risk or at risk of failure due to their diagnostic score. But we felt that it was unfair to limit access to everyone. So they were open to everyone, but they were strongly encouraged to attend those workshops. We did kind of give some guidance that, if you have struggled with this, there are these workshops in place. Um, and I have or will be redesigning our personal tutoring starting in September, where this data is fed directly to the personal tutors. So we can have actual personal tutoring sessions that are tailored to, right, we can see you've struggled on here or you're not engaging here. How can we help you and kind of use personal tutoring to signpost them in the right direction?
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if you can hear me now because my Zoom looks like it's dying at the moment.
Yeah, I can
You
hear
can
you.
still hear me. Right,
Yeah.
okay. Um, Kevin or Michael, can you see any of those questions? Because as I say, my Zoom's now frozen on me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so let's just have a quick look. There's four questions in
Thanks.
there. So one from Sue Pauly. Um, Gareth, are you planning on using a standard maths anxiety scale or develop one yourself? And also a second part to that is, do you have a feeling on how much they're affected by maths anxiety or how much it's test anxiety?
So to answer Sue's question, I was going to steal the one that's on the uh, Sigma site from Sheffield. So we're going to just use a standard one. Um, I think it's a combination. I mean, it's just anecdotal evidence, but we did have students come and see us in tutorials saying, I am really nervous about doing a math module, as well as doing the assessment. But actually, I think there is genuine maths anxiety, which is why we have wanted to bring in this actual maths anxiety as part of the module, because I do think it genuinely maths anxiety that they suffer with.
Thanks, Gareth. And we'll take one more for this part of Telmo. You spoke a bit about AI malpractice, which I think we focus an awful lot on. But how are you mitigating against non-AI malpractice? So, for example, a student asking someone else to do the quiz for them.
Yeah, that's another one. That's one we haven't been able to come up with a solution yet. Um, really putting our trust in their honesty, to be honest with you. We did consider running the sessions only at certain points as a lab, and they can come in at certain points and take it. Um, but that was we just didn't have the facilities to be able to offer that kind of mechanism. So yeah, that's a big one. That's something we need to try and figure out. But yeah, I haven't got an answer for that one. Sorry, Michael.
No, no, not at all, Gareth. And I think what that's highlighted is at the moment we probably spend so much time focusing on the AI related aspects that some of the other aspects with which we were familiar in the past don't get as much attention anymore. And I think that's this has served as a really important reminder that we shouldn't forget about that. So I think that's a very useful question, great response, Gareth, to remind us of that. I think. So
Yep.
go on, Gareth.
No, no, sorry. A question's just come through. Just very quickly. It doesn't contribute to their degree classification, no.
Brilliant. What we'll do is we will move on to the second part, if that's okay. I think we'll thank Gareth again. Also, Harry, your work behind this as well, also to be acknowledged. So I think another round of applause.